This week I decided to make an apron. My sister-in-law gave me this beautiful fabric, and it was going to be perfect for this McCalls 2925 apron from the 1970s. I have never actually tried to use pattern instructions from the 1970s before, so that was a bit of a challenge. I will have to say they expect you to know a little bit more about putting together an apron than I did, because I have never actually made an apron. And I was doing the apron with the bib. So I got the bib made, and when I went to put the bib onto the waistband, I kept twisting the back straps, so I think I had to rip it out at least twice and redo it. But I finally got it done. This is it, all nice and finished. It went together relatively easy. I put the pockets on because I love having pockets, but it was a little longer than I wanted, and after wearing it a few times, I decided that I absolutely hate the bib, so in the end, I ended up ripping off the bib. The next thing I did this week was make my favorite bread recipe. It came out of the Rural Life cooking book. I'll have the exact name of the book down in the description below. This bread is really simple. It just has water, yeast, sugar, and then salt and flour. And I love how it tastes, and it always seems to come out perfect. One of the things I love the most about this recipe is that you don't have to knead the bread for very long. So it's not one of those where you're kneading the bread for 10 minutes or more. This one, you just knead it till you have enough flour in it to make a stiff dough and till it's smooth. So I probably kneaded it for about 3 to 5 minutes maybe. When I was done kneading the bread, I put some oil into the bowl, and then I made sure that all the dough was coated in the oil, and that there was plenty of oil on the sides of the bowl so that the dough wouldn't stick while it was rising. I put the dough to rise for about an hour and a half. Once the dough was double, then it was ready to be shaped. So first I knocked all the air out of it, and then I flattened it out, rolled it up, and it was ready to go in the pan. I had greased the pan beforehand so that it wouldn't stick while it was baking. I put the bread aside for another 45 minutes till it was going to be double in bulk. And while that was rising the second time, I decided to make some butter. I put a cup of cream in a jar and let it come to room temperature, because butter works best if the cream is at room temperature. I'm using a butter turn that my husband had purchased years ago. from a potter in Utah. It works really well. I think, though, it's been a few years since I've actually made butter, that I didn't quite turn it long enough. After the butter came together, I separated the butter from the buttermilk and then put the butter in a bowl of cold water to squeeze as much of the buttermilk out as I could. The more buttermilk you squeeze out, the fresher your butter will stay. It will hold up better in the refrigerator. It took me a couple of bowls of water to get all of the buttermilk out of the butter, and then once the water was clear, I dumped the water out and patted the butter dry, and then added some sea salt. My original plan was to make little individual pats of butter, so I was using my mini muffin tin to form the pats of butter. My husband had purchased some butter stamps at the thrift store a few years ago. One had a flower on it and one had an acorn, and so the goal was to get the butter formed into the little patties and then stamp the top of them with the butter stamps. But my butter was way too soft for that. I did put it in the freezer for about 10 minutes to see if it started to freeze, if it would be hard enough that I could stamp it then, but it still didn't work. I think I'm going to have to try making butter a few more times to get it so that I'll be able to make a nice stamp on it. Once I had the butter pats formed in the muffin tin, I put it in the freezer for about 20 minutes. When the bread had doubled in size, I put it in the oven at 350 degrees and baked it for 40 minutes. While that was baking, I decided to remove the butter pats from the muffin tin. They kind of stuck a little bit, so I think next time I will grease the muffin tin just a little bit with some non-stick cooking spray so that they'll pop out a little bit easier. And then I decided the best place for the butter pats was going to be in the refrigerator, so I put them in a Tupperware container with wax paper in between the layers to keep them from sticking together. I was really happy with how the bread came out. I don't like the top of my bread to be quite as crusty, so I always rub a little bit of butter on the top of it. Then that softens the crust up really nice. I rub the butter on while it's still hot. My favorite piece of bread to eat is the butt end right after the bread comes out of the oven. So I am cutting this while it's still really hot, but I love it when it's fresh out of the oven and the butter melts on it really nicely. Funny thing is I hate eating the butt end of the bread from store-bought bread, but from fresh made bread, it's my favorite piece. This bread is so nice. It has a good texture and a good flavor, and it tasted absolutely delicious with the fresh butter that I'd made. We finished the loaf off in one day. We had baked beans and bread for dinner, and there wasn't a crumb left by the time the kids were done. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great week.